Zanzibar, a name that, for centuries, stirred imaginations around the world. Situated just off the coast of modern-day Tanzania, this island paradise was blessed with warm breezes, fertile soil, and a location that made it the beating heart of East African trade. Sailors crossing the Indian Ocean knew it well. Its harbors welcomed Arab dhows with their great triangular sails, Indian merchants bearing cloth and beads, and African traders bringing ivory, gold, and other treasures from the continent's interior. European captains, too, were drawn to this jewel of the sea. At the center of it all was the spice trade. The island's soil produced cloves of such richness and aroma that they became its greatest export. Nutmeg, cinnamon, and pepper added to the bounty. To the wider world, Zanzibar became famous as the Spice Island, a place where fortunes could be made and where the air itself carried the intoxicating scent of trade. But Zanzibar's wealth carried a shadow. Behind the markets, behind the ornate palaces, behind the rhythmic calls of the muezzin echoing across the city, there was another reality, one built on suffering. For centuries, Zanzibar was one of the last and largest hubs of the East African slave trade. From the mainland, caravans of enslaved men, women, and children were driven in chains to the coast. Many perished on the journey, and those who survived were crowded into the island's markets, waiting to be sold. Their destinations lay far beyond the horizon, to Arabia, to Persia, to the islands of the Indian Ocean. Travelers in the 19th century described haunting scenes, chains clinking in the streets, markets filled with people treated as commodities. While the world around Zanzibar began to turn against slavery, here it remained entrenched, protected by wealth and power. By the late 1800s, the currents of global politics were shifting. Europe was entering the age of high imperialism. The old days of merchants and explorers were giving way to a new reality, the scramble for Africa. Britain, Germany, France, and other powers were no longer content to trade with Africa. They wanted to dominate it. To the European empires, Zanzibar was not simply an island, it was a key. Whoever controlled Zanzibar controlled the trade routes of the Western Indian Ocean. It was a naval base, a gateway to the African interior, and a symbol of influence in one of the most competitive regions of the world. The Sultanate of Zanzibar, though wealthy, was precariously positioned. Its rulers were caught between immense outside pressures. The British, with their global navy, sought to suppress the slave trade while securing their own interests. The Germans, expanding rapidly into East Africa, had their own designs on the region. Both courted the sultans, offering protection on one hand and veiled threats on the other. The sultans walked a thin line. Too much resistance risked provoking the wrath of an empire. Too much compliance risked surrendering sovereignty and independence. Every decision was a gamble. Zanzibar, once the master of its destiny, had become a pawn on the chessboard of global power. And soon, a sudden death, a contested throne, and a single act of defiance would shatter the balance and plunge the island into a war that would be remembered not for its battles, but for its brevity. On August 25, 1896, the island of Zanzibar was shaken to its core. Sultan Hamad bin Thuwaini, the ruler who had maintained a delicate balance with the British Empire, died suddenly, leaving the throne empty and the palace in uncertainty. His death was not just a personal loss, it was a spark that ignited a succession crisis. In Zanzibar, as in many monarchies, the death of a ruler was never merely a private affair. It was a test of power, loyalty, and political cunning. The British, who had long exercised influence over the island, were already preparing to ensure the next sultan would be someone cooperative, someone who would continue to protect British interests and uphold the delicate balance of empire. To them, this was about more than a crown. It was about control. But not everyone shared that vision. One man, Sultan Hamad's cousin, had different ambitions. Khalid bin Barghash, a strong-willed and determined figure, saw an opportunity. Rather than waiting for approval or consultation, he acted decisively. Within hours of Hamad's death, Khalid marched into the royal palace, claimed the throne for himself, and began fortifying his position. He was not alone. Over 2,800 men gathered under his command, palace guards, loyal soldiers, and even civilians ready to defend their new sultan. Barricades were erected, artillery positioned, and the air in the palace district grew tense with anticipation. Khalid had made his move, and now he held the reins of power, at least for the moment. The problem was simple, yet monumental. Khalid had not sought British approval. To the British authorities, this was not just a local dispute over a throne. It was a direct challenge to imperial authority. The empire depended on rulers who would obey its guidance, not defy it. Any act of defiance, no matter how small, could threaten the fragile order the British had worked so hard to establish across their colonies. In those tense hours, the stage was set. The island of Zanzibar, rich with trade and history, was now at the center of a confrontation that would test loyalty, courage, and the limits of imperial power. And all of it would erupt in a conflict so brief it would be recorded as the shortest war in history. The clock was ticking, and Khalid's bold decision had set the entire island on a course collision with the might of the British Empire. From its dramatic beginning to its abrupt end, the Anglo-Zanzibar War of 1896 lasted a mere 38 minutes, a fleeting moment in the sweep of history. Yet its impact was anything but brief. The war's story continues to echo through the corridors of time, a reminder that even the shortest conflicts can cast the longest shadows. It is a testament to the power of empires, the fragility of small nations, and the courage or audacity of individuals who dare to defy overwhelming odds. In less than an hour, lives were changed, a city's skyline altered, and history recorded a war unlike any other. And though brief, the lessons of Zanzibar in 1896 remain enduring, that in the struggle between might and principle, even the smallest players can leave a mark that resonates far beyond their moment.